Hi, I'm Jeanette Roche. This is Forum Daily West. Here are some of the top stories we've been following. U.S. President Donald Trump says he wants the U.S. to take over the war-shattered Gaza Strip. Plus, as a trade war with the U.S. has been paused, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says Canadians more united than ever. And Alberta Premier Danielle Smith with a different take on the issues of tariffs. Legislative reporter Tyler Dawson has the details. Thanks so much for joining us. There are reports of another airliner collision coming out of the Seattle-Tacoma International Airport in Washington State. The video surfaces showing the Japan Airlines plane that seemingly hits or grazes the tail of a parked Delta Airlines plane. There are no reports of any injuries, but the Daily Mail is reporting there were 142 passengers on the Delta flight, which was on its way to Puerto Vallarta, Mexico. According to the company, passengers were being moved to a new aircraft. One of the passengers told Richmond News that the entire plane shook during the collision and that an aircraft came up behind them from their window seat, looking like it was very close. Then a few seconds later, there was a very loud noise and the plane shook. This comes only a week following the mid-air collision between an American Airlines passenger jet and a Black Hawk military helicopter right outside of Washington National Airport in D.C. that killed 67 people. And only 5 days later, a medevac plane crashed into a Philadelphia neighborhood that killed 7 people and injured 19. Well, Lethbridge police have charged a 38-year-old woman in connection with the death of her 13-year-old son. On December 26th, police responded to a suspicious death of the boy, whose body was found on Mayor McGrath Drive along the 1600 block. Throughout the investigation, it was determined that around 5 p.m. on Christmas Day, the mother and her son were using drugs when the boy overdosed in their residence. A hang-up call to 911 was placed by a male acquaintance. According to police, the mother hid the boy's body and lied regarding his whereabouts to avoid apprehension. The mother and her son allegedly left a residence that evening and spent the night on the street. The mother then reported the next day that she found her son deceased. Blanche Isabel Irene Fick is charged with criminal negligence causing death and failing to provide the necessaries of life, and is scheduled to appear in court on February the 7th. According to Health Canada, over 49,000 Canadians have died of opioid overdoses since 2016. And in late October of 2024, the RCMP uncovered the largest and most sophisticated fentanyl and methamphetamine drug superlab in Canada in Falkland, British Columbia, with associated locations in Surrey, BC. Police reported that they found enough fentanyl and ingredients to make over 95 million lethal doses. Today, Pierre Poilievre announced his party's proposal that would address the trafficking, production, and distribution of fentanyl in Canada.
As part of my Canada First plan, that Common Sense Conservatives will bring mandatory prison sentences. There will be life sentences for anyone caught trafficking, producing, or exporting over 40 milligrams of fentanyl. 40 milligrams is enough to kill 20 people. Anyone who is involved in trafficking that amount of fentanyl will get a life sentence. We will lock them up and we will throw away the key. And 15 years for traffickers caught with between 20 milligrams and 40 milligrams will be the new mandatory sentence.
And Poilievre pointed out that the Liberal government, with support of the NDP and Bloc parties, passed Bill C-5, which eliminated mandatory jail time for the production and trafficking of hard drugs like fentanyl. U.S. President Donald Trump made a stunning proposal to forcibly transfer hundreds of thousands of Palestinians out of the Gaza Strip and develop it as a tourist destination. The plan, however, faces many obstacles. Joe Fetterman with the Associated Press has more.
President Donald Trump has unveiled a new and controversial plan for the future of the Gaza Strip. Trump says that after Israel ends its war in Gaza, the territory's entire population, that's about 2 million Palestinians, should be transferred to other countries. He says the U.S. would then step in and run Gaza and oversee a lengthy reconstruction process. Now, this idea of mass transfer is something that traditionally has been limited to the far-right fringes of Israeli politics. Trump is now bringing this idea out into the mainstream. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was with Trump when he unveiled the plan at the White House. Netanyahu has welcomed it, and his hardline allies in Israel are ecstatic over the plan.
Meanwhile, residents in the Gaza Strip rejected Trump's proposal to permanently resettle the enclave's population and have the U.S. take ownership into redeveloping the territory. One Gaza resident says dying here is better than going anywhere else because you have nothing after losing your land, country, and home. Although it is demolished, our homes are worth the whole world to us. We have lived and seen a lot, but since we have seen our homes, all of the sadness in us has left. Another Gaza resident says, quote, "My response to these statements by Donald Trump, even if it is happening, is that we are not leaving. We have seen death with our own eyes, and we didn't flee to the south. We have seen the artillery bombardment next to us, killing and injuring people, and we stayed. We didn't leave." End quote. As President Trump continues to hold out the threat of steep tariffs on Canadian imports in exchange for a safer border, Federal Trade Minister Mary Ng says her government's Team Canada approach is working.
We've probably done over 1,300, meetings and interactions with businesses and stakeholders, labor organizations, governors, legislators at all levels, bipartisan, Republicans as well as Democrats, to really make the point with those who are those businesses or those labor leaders who either on the United States side count on Canada as a big customer. We are the top customer for 36 United States. I keep reminding people that we buy more from the United States. Canada buys more from the United States than Japan, than China, than the United Kingdom combined.
Echoing those sentiments during a Lunar New Year event in Ottawa Tuesday, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said Canadians are more united than ever as a Canada-U.S. trade war has been paused. He says his government will keep fighting until the threat of tariffs is off the table.
I've never been more optimistic about Canada's future. We're not out of the woods yet. We need to continue to pull together and be there for each other. But as I announced yesterday, we reached an agreement with the United States to pause the proposed tariffs against Canada, along with our countermeasures, and working together to tackle the scourge of fentanyl. And, of course, we will keep working until those tariffs are off the table altogether.
As Trudeau has been working to appease Trump with border security measures, Alberta Premier Danielle Smith has been in the U.S. on a kind of a diplomatic mission to address the tariffs that have been threatened against Canada. Alberta correspondent for the National Post, Tyler Dawson, explains more.
Smith is crediting her diplomatic campaign with the original tariff was supposed to be 25% across all goods coming from Canada. When it was announced last weekend, it was a 10% tariff on energy exports, which of course would have included a lot of Alberta oil and gas. And Smith is crediting her diplomacy with that reduced rate for some of those products. So we don't obviously know what's going to happen at the end of this 30-day period, but the Alberta government's been big on diplomacy and they don't show any signs of slowing down on that front.
Well, the Alberta Utilities Commission has approved the application from the City of Medicine Hat to obtain ownership of the proposed Saumis Solar Park project. Medicine Hat generates and distributes their own electricity at a retail level to residents. The project is meant to diversify the electric assets. The solar project will be located at a 1,600-acre site in the north end of Medicine Hat. The city says their next steps are to apply for an amendment to the Utilities Commission to decrease the proposed size and output of the solar.
The existing approval that the Alberta Utilities Commission had supported is for 325 megawatts. That compares against our existing natural gas fleet that's closer to 300 megawatts. So the city does not intend to build out the full 325 megawatts anytime soon. In fact, part of the approval we've just received under our exemption of the Electric Utilities Act We had to request to build a certain amount, and we've requested to build up to 75 megawatts, so much smaller than the current approval. And that represents an opportunity to phase the project. We don't want to build too much too soon and overwhelm the existing natural gas supply that we have and introduce congestion into our system.
Preliminary costs have been modeled, and the project awaits budget approvals from City Council in the coming weeks before a construction timetable can be given. Well, Streets Alive Missions is running out of donations of winter clothing and is looking for help from the public to restock during this current cold snap.
It's very cold out, and as such, we have been going through all of our winter gear supplies. We did just bring our last load over from our repurposed center and sorting center of jackets and of winter good layerable clothing.
As the temperatures drop, we need to remember that home fires become even more frequent during this time of year when we encounter cold snaps. To keep our guard up when it comes to safety, Troy Hicks, Chief Fire Marshal with the Lethbridge Fire and Emergency Services, shares practical tips for heating our homes, plugging in our vehicles, and using wood-burning fireplaces, to name a few.
Carbon monoxide is a deadly killer. It is colorless, it's odorless, it is produced when you end up having any solid fuel appliances burning, and when they don't burn and support complete combustion of the materials, that's when you get carbon monoxide. Make sure your home is ventilated, and what I mean by that is when you have your air intakes and your ventilation pipes that come out of your home for your furnaces or hot water tank, go have a look. With the buildup of some moisture and colder temperatures, you can get ice that hang out of them, and there's always a possibility that it will plug them. That's not allowing now the ventilation to happen, which is going to be filling your home with carbon monoxide. Make sure you have a carbon monoxide detector in your home. If you ever smell gas in your home, call 911, evacuate your home. When we're talking about space heaters or wood-burning fireplaces, you want to keep a 1 meter clearance around them for at least 1 meter away from any appliances. Just due to the risk of they could heat up, they could dry out, and they could catch fire. You also want to keep a 1 meter kid-free zone around there too, to minimize the risk of kids getting a little too close, maybe playing and not realizing how close they are to the heating appliance. The stove and oven in your home is not designed to heat your home.
According to Canadian Red Cross, house fires are most likely to occur between December and March. The city of Lethbridge is announcing a new strategic plan for Henderson Lake Park, and the city's Parks Department wants to gather feedback from residents to help shape this plan because as the park continues to age, community needs may evolve. The document will guide future planning, improvement projects, and the holistic long-term vision. You can share your thoughts with the city in the Henderson Park Strategic Plan Survey, which is open until February 28th. To complete the survey or learn more about the project, visit getinvolvedlethbridge.ca. Siphon leaks in the river valley have been repaired and are now fully operational. The leaking was first noticed on January 8th when it caused a sinkhole and wastewater to surface. Crews found a crack in one of the 3 lines. After the initial repair, workers found that a second pipe was also leaking. They successfully fixed it on February 1st, and they have not discovered any further leaks. Video inspections of all 3 pipes also found no additional issues, and the site is being monitored for any more leaks. The repair area remains closed to the public. The Calgary Zoo has announced a nearly $16 million plan to redevelop some wildlife habitats ahead of its centennial in 2029. The zoo announced Monday it would begin an expansion of its Exploration Asia zone next month with larger and improved habitats for some of its more prominent residents.
The redevelopment is going to feature expansive new dynamic habitats for our snow leopards, our red pandas, and our red-crowned cranes. Also going to tease you that we're going to get a new species that we're going to talk about later this year. This phase 1 of this project is estimated right now at $15.8 million, and we're funding that internally. This is the first of a series of projects. We're constantly looking into how we update our facilities, and as we approach our centennial, we have a cascade of projects that we'll be focused on and working with the community to find funding for it.
The Canadian Association of Insolvency and Restructuring Professionals says business and consumer insolvencies reached a 15-year high through 2024. In the fourth quarter of 2024, insolvencies rose 5.2% year over year to more than 35,000 filings. A BC Supreme Court judge has barred WestJet from capping travelers' reimbursement for meals and accommodations. Travelers forced to find a hotel room or a restaurant because of a canceled flight were told the airline had maximum amounts for meals and accommodations. WestJet says it removed the expense ceiling in August and has no plan to revive the old policy. The judge ruled passengers would be harmed if WestJet continued telling their customers their expenses were capped. The Canadian company that processed plant-based milk linked to a deadly listeria outbreak is trying to sell 2 of its facilities. Toronto-based Jariki was granted court protection from creditors and is trying to liquidate the Pickering, Ontario plant where the outbreak started. At least 20 people were infected across the country and 3 people died between August 2023 and last July. Jariki says it has potential buyers for turnkey sale of its Toronto and Delta, BC facilities. Purolator has acquired one of Canada's largest customs brokers to boost its trade expertise in the Trump era. Canada Post-owned Purolator has bought Livingston International for an undisclosed amount. Purolator Chief Executive John Ferguson says about 30% of Purolator's business stems from cross-border deliveries. That is your Forum Daily West report. I'm Jeanette Roche. Thanks so much for watching.